The first mortar shell hit the motor pool at exactly 03:47 hours. Staff Sergeant Martinez was drinking his third cup of coffee when the explosion threw him against the concrete wall of the communications bunker. But while everyone else was diving for cover, one person in that bunker didn't even flinch. Ethan Cross just kept working on the radio that everyone said was beyond repair. What happened in the next 12 minutes would save 847 American lives, and nobody saw it coming. From what city are you watching this incredible story? Drop your location in the comments and let us know what surprised you most about Ethan Cross. If stories like this move you, tales of everyday heroes doing extraordinary things, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. There are more untold stories waiting. And remember, sometimes the most important person in the room is the one nobody notices. Ethan Cross had been invisible at FOB Dakota for 8 months. While the infantry guys told war stories, Ethan fixed their broken equipment. While the Special Forces operators planned missions, Ethan made sure their radios actually worked when they needed them. At 29, he was older than most of the soldiers, but nobody treated him like military. He wore digital camo, but everyone knew he was just a contractor. The guy who showed up when your satellite phone died or your GPS unit started showing coordinates in Antarctica. But what they didn't know about Ethan Cross would shock them all. The morning of the attack started like any other. Ethan arrived at the communications bunker at 05:30, carrying his toolbox and a cup of coffee that had gone cold 3 hours ago. The night shift radio operator, Specialist Henderson, looked relieved to see him. "Cross, thank God you're here," Henderson said, pointing to a military radio set on the workbench. "That piece of junk has been picking up static all night, some kind of interference pattern. It's driving me crazy." Ethan set down his coffee and examined the radio. AN/PRC150 Advanced High Frequency Radio. Standard issue, but this one had seen better days. Scratched housing, loose antenna connection, and something else. Something that made his engineer's mind start racing. "When did the interference start?" Ethan asked, pulling out his multimeter. "Around midnight. Weird thing is, it's not random static. It's almost like patterns." Ethan's hands froze on the radio casing. In his previous life, before he became just a tech guy, he'd been a signals intelligence specialist. He'd learned to recognize patterns that other people missed. And what he was hearing in that static wasn't interference. It was encrypted communication. But what Ethan discovered next would change everything. As Ethan worked on the radio, his mind was processing what Henderson had described. Interference patterns starting at midnight. In Afghanistan, midnight was prime time for enemy movement. He connected his laptop to the radio's output and started recording the static. To anyone else, it would sound like random noise. But Ethan's software began isolating frequency patterns, filtering out genuine interference and revealing something underneath. Voices, speaking in Pashto. "Henderson," Ethan said quietly, "I need you to call Major Williams, right now." "What's wrong with the radio?" "Nothing's wrong with the radio. It's working perfectly." Ethan's voice was calm, but his hands were moving faster now, connecting cables, adjusting settings. "It's picking up enemy communications on a frequency they think we can't monitor." Henderson's eyes widened. "You're saying—" "I'm saying someone's planning something big, and they're talking about it right now." Just then, the first mortar shell hit. The explosion shook the entire bunker. Emergency lights flickered on as the main power died. Through the thick concrete walls, they could hear shouts, vehicle engines, and the distinctive whistle of incoming mortars. "We're under attack!" Henderson grabbed his rifle and headed for the door. "Wait!" Ethan called out. "The radio! I'm still getting their communications." Henderson turned back. "Cross, we need to get to defensive positions." But Ethan was already deep in his element. His laptop screen showed wave patterns, frequency analysis, signal strength indicators. Even with explosions rocking the base, his engineer's mind was working the problem, and what he found made his blood run cold. "Henderson, they're not just attacking randomly," Ethan said, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "Listen to this." He played back a filtered audio clip. Even Henderson, who didn't speak Pashto, could hear the coordinated nature of the communications. Radio calls with precise timing, grid coordinates, target designations. "This isn't some insurgent group with mortars," Ethan continued. "This is a coordinated assault by people who know exactly what they're targeting." Another explosion, much closer this time. Henderson was torn between duty and disbelief. "Cross, I have to report to my unit." "They're jamming our primary communications," Ethan interrupted, pointing to his equipment panel. Look, every military frequency is being blocked by targeted interference. The only reason we can hear them is because they don't know this old radio can reach their frequency band. The terrible reality was sinking in. OB Dakota was under coordinated attack by an enemy force that had somehow neutralized their ability to call for backup or coordinate defense. 847 American soldiers were cut off under attack with no way to communicate with the outside world, except for one broken radio that just a tech guy had been fixing. What Ethan did next broke every protocol and saved everyone. While the battle raged outside, Ethan Cross made a decision that would have gotten him court-martialed under normal circumstances. He was going to hack into the enemy's communication network. "Henderson, I need you to trust me," Ethan said, connecting additional equipment to the radio. "I'm going to try something that's either going to save us all or get us killed." "What are you talking about?" Ethan's hands moved with practiced precision, adjusting frequency settings, modifying signal parameters, turning the old radio into something its designers never intended. "In my previous job, before I became a contractor, I specialized in electronic warfare, signal intelligence, communication disruption, frequency manipulation." His voice was steady despite the explosions getting closer. "I can't just listen to their communications. I can interfere with them." Henderson stared at him. "Who the hell are you, really?" "Right now, I'm the only chance this base has." The laptop screen showed Ethan's software identifying multiple enemy communication nodes, vehicle-mounted radios, handheld units, command frequencies, all operating on a network that assumed American forces couldn't access their bands. They were wrong, and Ethan Cross was about to prove it. What happened next defied everything Henderson thought he knew about radio technology. Ethan had turned their simple field radio into a digital warfare weapon. Using software he'd written himself, he began injecting false signals into the enemy communication network. "I'm sending fake coordinates to their mortar teams," Ethan explained, his fingers moving across multiple keyboards simultaneously, making them think American positions are 200 meters from where they actually are. On the laptop screen, Henderson could see real-time displays of enemy positions, communication flows, signal strengths. It looked like something from a science fiction movie. But it was working. The incoming mortar fire began missing its targets. Explosions that should have hit the barracks were landing in empty fields. Attacks that should have overwhelmed defensive positions were hitting abandoned buildings. "How is this possible?" Henderson asked. "Radio waves are just electromagnetic signals," Ethan replied, not looking up from his work. "If you understand the physics, you can manipulate them, redirect them, turn them into weapons." But the enemy was starting to adapt. Through the intercepted communications, Ethan could hear confusion, then frustration, then growing suspicion that their network was compromised. They were about to change their entire communication system, and when they did, Ethan would lose his ability to protect the base. But Ethan Cross had one final card to play. "Henderson, I need you to get me a direct line to whoever's in charge of base defense right now," Ethan said urgently. "The command post is probably..." "Not the command post. They're jamming military frequencies, remember?" Ethan pointed to a different radio setup. "But they can't jam everything. Get me someone on the emergency frequency." Henderson worked his way through static and interference until he reached Major Williams, who was coordinating defense from a forward position. "Sir, this is Henderson in the comm bunker. I have a civilian contractor here who says he has critical intelligence about the attack pattern." "Henderson, this is not the time for..." Ethan took the handset. "Major Williams, this is Ethan Cross. I've been monitoring enemy communications for the past 20 minutes. They're using a coordinated communication network that I've managed to infiltrate, but they're about to change frequencies, and when they do, we'll lose our advantage." There was a pause, filled with distant explosions and gunfire. "Cross, what exactly are you telling me?" "I'm telling you that in approximately 4 minutes, they're going to launch their final assault on the main compound, and I know exactly where they're coming from." What happened next would become legend at FOB Dakota. Ethan Cross, using nothing but an old radio and his engineer's understanding of electromagnetic physics, had turned the tables on a coordinated enemy assault. "I'm sending you their exact positions now," Ethan told Major Williams while his fingers danced across the keyboard. "Grid coordinates for all their mobile units, their command posts, their jamming equipment." "How can you possibly know?" "Because I'm listening to them planted in real time, and I'm tracking their signal sources." Through his improvised electronic warfare setup, Ethan could see the entire battlefield from the enemy's perspective. Their communication network, designed to be invisible to American forces, had become their weakness. and Ethan Cross was exploiting it perfectly. Major, they have a secondary assault team approaching from the south perimeter that your people don't know about. 6 vehicles, approximately 30 combatants planning to breach the fence in 3 minutes. Williams' voice crackled through the radio. How can you be certain? Because I'm watching their commander give the orders right now. The tide of battle was turning. American forces, guided by Ethan's real-time intelligence, began intercepting enemy units before they could reach their targets. Mortar teams found themselves under precision counterfire. Assault groups walked into prepared ambushes, but the enemy was finally realizing their communications were compromised, and they were about to do something desperate. The final minutes would test everything Ethan Cross had learned. Henderson, they're shutting down their network, Ethan announced grimly, switching to backup frequencies and manual coordination. Is that bad? It means they're going to make one final push before we can track them anymore. Ethan's equipment showed enemy signals going dark one by one, and they're focusing everything on this bunker. Henderson's face went pale. They know we're here? They know someone's been interfering with their communications, and they've triangulated the source. Ethan began rapidly disconnecting equipment. We have maybe 90 seconds before this place gets hit by everything they have left. Through the static-filled radio, they could hear the enemy coordinating their final assault. No more elaborate network communications, just direct, desperate orders to destroy the American position that had been causing them so much trouble. The communications bunker was about to become ground zero. Cross, we need to evacuate, Henderson said, grabbing his gear. But Ethan was still working, his hands moving with desperate precision across his equipment. What are you doing? Sending a message. What Ethan Cross did in those final 90 seconds would be studied by electronic warfare specialists for years to come. Using the last few moments of access to the enemy communication network, he didn't just send coordinates or intelligence to American forces, he sent a message directly to the enemy. Broadcasting on their command frequency, in perfect Pashto, Ethan's voice cut through their communications. This is the American operator who has been disrupting your network for the past hour. Your assault has failed, your positions are known, your communications are compromised. I suggest you withdraw while you still can. Henderson stared at him. You speak Pashto? Among other languages, Ethan replied calmly, still monitoring the enemy frequencies. It was part of my previous job description. The effect on enemy communications was immediate. Confusion, argument, growing panic as they realized that not only had their network been penetrated, but their opponent understood their language and had been listening to everything. The psychological impact was devastating. Within minutes, intercepted communications showed enemy units beginning to withdraw. The coordinated assault dissolved into scattered, disorganized retreat. FOB Dakota was saved. But Henderson wasn't done being shocked. Cross, who are you really? Ethan Cross looked at him with those calm, analytical eyes that had just orchestrated one of the most incredible defensive actions in modern military history. I used to work for an agency that doesn't officially exist, doing jobs that never happened in places that aren't on any map. But the biggest surprise was still coming. As the all-clear sounded across FOB Dakota, word spread quickly about what had happened in the communications bunker. The quiet contractor who fixed radios had somehow single-handedly disrupted an entire enemy assault. Major Williams arrived at the bunker 20 minutes later, accompanied by the base commander, Colonel Rodriguez. Cross, Major Williams said, still processing what he'd witnessed. I need a full debrief on what happened here. Nothing happened, Ethan replied, methodically packing up his equipment. Your communications were experiencing interference. I fixed it. Standard tech support. Colonel Rodriguez stepped forward. Son, don't give me that. I just coordinated a defense action based on intelligence that shouldn't have been possible to obtain. Ethan continued packing, his movements calm and efficient. Sir, with respect, I'm just a contractor. I fix radios when they break. I make sure your equipment works when you need it. But Colonel Rodriguez wasn't buying it. Henderson, tell me exactly what you saw. Henderson looked between Ethan and the colonel, clearly struggling with what to say. Sir, Cross intercepted enemy communications using standard equipment. He provided tactical intelligence that helped coordinate our defense. That's all I saw. It was a lie, and everyone in the room knew it. But it was also exactly the kind of lie that allowed certain operations to remain classified, certain people to maintain their cover, and certain heroes to stay invisible. 3 days later, life at FOB Dakota had returned to normal. The attack was officially reported as a failed insurgent assault that was repelled by standard defensive measures. Ethan Cross was back to fixing radios. But things were different now. When soldiers brought him broken equipment, they looked at him with new respect. When officers needed communication support, they specifically asked for Cross. Nobody talked about what had really happened in the communications bunker. But everyone remembered. A week after the attack, Specialist Henderson approached Ethan's workbench. "Cross, can I ask you something?" "Sure," Ethan replied, not looking up from the satellite phone he was repairing. "That night, when you said you used to work for an agency that doesn't exist, did I say that?" Ethan looked up with a slight smile. "I don't recall." Henderson nodded slowly. "Right, of course not." But as he turned to leave, he heard Ethan speak quietly. "Henderson, if anything like that ever happens again, and someone needs to fix a radio that's picking up interference, you know where to find me." The quiet tech guy went back to his work. The invisible hero remained invisible, and 847 American soldiers went home alive.